So we're going to spend some time in this video exploring the storyboard. So go ahead and open up the main.storyboard file. And I need my right panel. I'm going to go ahead and close my left-hand panel to give myself a little bit more space to work with here. So let's start in the top left-hand corner of our storyboard here. We can see where we currently are or what we currently have selected. So we see that chain here. And we see that we have the view controller scene here. And we're going to refer to this as our scene outline quite often. And in here we have our view controller. So we have one view controller, and if we select what's called the identity inspector, we can see that the class that manages it is view controller. So if I quickly just pop open my left-hand pane here, you see that we have a class here named viewcontroller.swift. And this class is managing this view controller. Now, if I delete this, it's still going to say view controller scene view controller, but the class is no longer going to be properly reflected here. And this view controller inside of my storyboard is no longer going to be managed by the viewcontroller.swift file. So when we update the class that manages a specific view, and we will add additional view controllers in the future, they'll have different names like detail view controller or main view controller. We'll be updating the class to something like main view controller and so on and so forth. So each view controller in our storyboard has one view controller file, or it'll say like detail view controller or whatever the name of our file that is of type UI view controller, or subclass of UI view controller. We'll get to subclassing in the future. That manages it. So you want to make sure that you leave the class as view controller so that this file can manage this view. Now let's go back and take a look at the rest of our scene outline here. We have a top layout guide, a bottom layout guide, which we're not going to worry about right now, but what we will be looking at is the view. And the view is the most important thing in our storyboard right now because the view is what we can add all of our UI elements on top of. What do I mean by that? Well, if we take a look at the bottom right-hand corner here, we're going to make sure we have the object library selected. There's two other buttons here. One is for adding different classes. So we can add like a Cocoa Touch class. We can add a Swift file. We can also have code snippets. This is really cool if you want to set up, your own macros. You want to add, you're not sure how to do well statements in Swift. You can drag in a code snippet, but we're going to be using the object library right now. And we're not going to be using the media library right now. You can add additional media items, sounds and stuff. So with our object library selected, we can add in different UI elements. So I can add a switch into my project. We can add a label. Labels are really useful for displaying text in our project. Maybe a button. This will be interactable. And you can stretch this out in our storyboard. You can drag these things around in our storyboard. It's a really cool graphical interface to use in order to set up your project here. Now, if you select your switch here, we see in our identity inspector that the class changes to UI switch. If we select our label, it changes to label. Our button switches to UI button. So this is changing. This right-hand panel is changing based upon what we have selected here. So if for some reason you can't find the right stuff in the right-hand corner over here, I recommend you take a look at your view controller scene and make sure that you have the proper UI element selected. A lot of errors that new students will have is they'll try to do something with the wrong item selected in their view controller. They'll accidentally have their view selected and they'll say, okay, why isn't this working? Why didn't this connection work? Or whatever the case is. So if we click on one of our UI elements again, let's just kind of click through these top options here. We have a file inspector, and this kind of sets up some defaults for our UI element. It says that we're going to use auto layout for it, localizations, target membership. It's important that we have target membership selected to postcard because then we're going to actually be able to access this inside of our postcard application. So definitely leave that checked. We also have a quick help here. It tells us what a switch does. You can use the UI switch class to create and manage the on-off buttons used. It gives us a suggestion of like maybe a settings page would have a switch in it. So if you're not sure what these things do, you can always click on this and go to the quick help. We also have our identity inspector that we saw before. And one of the most common ones that we're going to be adjusting here is the attributes inspector. And with the attributes inspector, we're going to be able to change things like the size of the font for our button. So we could change this to italic. We could change the size of the font here. make that a little bit larger. We could change the text color. Maybe we go to other and select something like purple. You don't need to do this. We're going to delete these UI elements, but I'm just trying to show you what this panel can do. The next thing is the size inspector. And this tells us where the button is located inside of the view's coordinate system. So 0, 0 is in the top left-hand corner. And as we go down, right, Y will increase. And as we go right, X will increase. So we could move this. We could set this to be like 0, 0, and we move it to the top left-hand corner. And then we see as we drag this thing down, our button down here, we're going to see that Y is now going to be 230. And if we drag this a little bit right, it'll be like 84. So this is telling us where it's located. We can also change the width and the height in this size inspector as well. The final one we're going to get to in the future when we actually start connecting up our UI elements here to our view controller. But this is what's known as the connections inspector, and it's going to show us what elements are connected up to the view controller, so we're going to be able to manage these UI elements in code. So that's really important, and it's really common to do. The final thing we're going to be taking a look at in this lecture is going to be this bottom area here. And one of the most common things new students do is they click the hide document outline accidentally, and then they don't know where that scene outline went. So just click this button here. I recommend you click it a few times just to really imprint it in your mind that this is can be open and closed, and that the button is located down here to do that. Another really common mistake for new students is they're going to change this to be compact any, and then maybe they'll go ahead and clone down a project, and they don't know where all their stuff is coming from, even though they're running their project and everything looks blank. But when they run their project, they actually can see all their UI elements. So sometimes if you set this to any, and then you select this to a different size here, now compact width, compact height, it kind of tells us what the final values are down here for 3.5 inch, 4 inch, and 4.7 iPhones in landscape, 5.5 iPhones in landscape, and then for iPads in portrait or landscape. You can kind of see which sizes it's recommending here. We're going to be using compact width and any height quite often, so you can select that. But if for some reason it gets reset to any, always take a look down here, and maybe you want to reset this to compact width and any height. So that's just a debugging tip for you. The final area that we have here is on the right hand side. We have all these different pin, align, and resolve auto layout issues. This is basically our panel or our buttons here. We can use to set up auto layout, which is going to be a constraint system to automatically stretch and move our UI elements so that we don't have to resize everything and move everything around for all of the different layouts available to us. So auto layouts can be super handy to deploy to many devices simultaneously. And it's really cool. We're going to get into this later. It's a little bit more of an advanced topic. As we get started, we're just trying to get something to show up in our simulator and start figuring out how we can start writing some Swift code. But that is coming in the future, and that's what these buttons do. The final thing we want to do here is we want to set up our storyboard, so we're going to be ready to start building on this in the next video. So let's go ahead and just remove all of the UI elements. If you've been following along here, we'll just delete them out. And make sure that you set this to compact width /any for your view here, or for your storyboard here. Once again, if you download this or if this gets reset to any, your stuff is going to disappear. So set it back to compact width, any height. And in our next video, we'll start setting up this storyboard. So we're going to start being able to display things when we run our application.